Tonight on The Wrap, it's Nigel Farage versus Keir Starmer. The government announced its 15th major U-turn today. The Prime Minister has abandoned plans to postpone elections for as many as 30 councils in May after Reform UK took them to court.
They've caved, they've collapsed. It's a victory for reform, but more importantly, it's a victory for democracy in this country. We are delighted.
Also ahead, the FBI hail a DNA breakthrough in the case of missing Nancy Guthrie, the mother of US TV star Savannah Guthrie. The search is now in its third week. Schools warn that pupils who haven't been vaccinated for measles could be sent home as an outbreak spreads across London. We'll look at why some families are failing to protect their children and what the response should be. Plus,
nothing else in the world smells like that. I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
famous for his roles in Apocalypse Now and The Godfather, Hollywood says goodbye to Robert Duvall, one of the greatest actors of all time. We discuss today's biggest stories with Deputy Political Editor of The Guardian, Jessica Elgot, and journalist and broadcaster Daisy McAndrew. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Hello there, a very good evening, Jessica, Daisy, welcome to you both. And Sir Keir Starmer has been in Downing Street for 19 months. And by our count, he has made now 15 major U-turns. The latest is on plans to cancel local council elections in May. Daisy, what do you make of this?
Well, as you said, 15 and counting. I mean, we know that Keir Starmer is the least popular Prime Minister, the least popular party leader for many, many generations. And if he's looking to rebuild the public's confidence in him, yet another U-turn on something as important as voting and democracy is not the way to go about it. And, of course, a big PR victory for Nigel Farage.
Yeah, I mean, if this government's going to be known for anything, it seems like it's going to be known for U-turns above almost anything else. And to rub salt in the wound, it does look like this U-turn will mean paying some of Nigel Farage's legal fees.
OK, thank you both for the moment. Well, today's announcement came after a court challenge from Nigel Farage, and in one more humiliation for the Prime Minister, the government is to pay Reform's legal bill.
Well, it was extraordinary. I mean, last year we saw cancellations of elections without any real exceptional reason. This year, up to 30 councils, 4.6 million people denied the vote. In some cases, Norfolk, Suffolk, East and West Sussex, this would have been the second year in a row that people who are paying their council tax would have been denied the chance to vote. So that's why we took them to the High Court. We were due there this Thursday. They've caved, they've collapsed. It's a victory for reform, but more importantly, it's a victory for democracy in this country. We are delighted.
Well, Mari Aurora is here with us. Hello, good evening. And she's been reporting on this all day. Let's take a look.
The government has changed its mind again, by our count, for the 15th time. The government planned to postpone local elections in 30 areas of England due to take place in May. After a court challenge from Reform UK, the government was given new legal advice that said the changes would in fact be illegal. This means that over 4.5 million extra people will be voting in May after all. But why did the government want to cancel these elections? Labour argued that it was a waste of time, money and resources to hold elections for councils that would ultimately be abolished and merged into larger council structures anyway. But turns out that would have been illegal. And not only has the government scrapped these plans, it now has to scrap planned legislation it created to make these changes possible. And it has agreed to pay Reform's legal fees too, something that we at Sky News understand to be a six-figure sum. Opposition parties are celebrating this U-turn as a victory for democracy. But it is Reform UK that ultimately forced the government to change course with its legal action, something Nigel Farage won't let Starmer forget in a hurry. In an interview just hours before this latest change of heart, the Prime Minister promised no more U-turns. But by our maths at Sky News, this makes U-turn number 15. And with even more councils and council seats up for grabs in May than first thought, Keir Starmer has even more to lose.
OK, so, Mari, this is quite a mess, isn't it, for the government?
Yeah, I think the difficulty for the government is the optics on a couple of levels. First of all, the optics of essentially being told you're going to lose this legal challenge, and actually what you're trying to do is probably not legal when you're being led by a lawyer. I think that is already uncomfortable when you've had months and months of government ministers having to defend this on the airwaves and, you know, wasting a lot of political capital. I think the second thing that is uncomfortable is the fact that the government is now going to have to pay Reform's legal fees. And that is essentially a Labour government handing taxpayers' money to their biggest rival, arguably, Reform UK, and that is uncomfortable in terms of the optics, but also the fact that actually sources have told Sky News that figure's likely to be a six-figure figure. So it's going to be a lot of money. And that is going to really stick in the teeth for a lot of Labour MPs and councillors who are really, really worried about reform.
Yeah, it really is. Mari makes a really good point, Jessica, doesn't she? That people are going to think, well, hang on a minute, Keir Starmer was a lawyer, a brilliant mind, by all accounts. How can he make such a big mistake, especially just days before this legal challenge?
I mean, reading some of the backstory about how chaotic this was in the run-up is really quite extraordinary. I mean, we think we've seen chaos in the previous weeks, but it seems like Steve Reid, the local government secretary, was only told a few days ago this might happen. He then passes the brief over to Matt Pennycook to get his junior minister to make the decision, and they eventually come back with that they've got to suddenly pull the whole thing. I mean, it's truly extraordinary how this has panned out, you know, days before they were supposed to be in court.
Yeah, and Daisy, you've got to think as well about these councils who are now also having to really gear themselves up for the May election, which they thought they weren't going to be taking part of.
And I think a lot of people were really, really confused about why that decision was taken in the first place. And it is because there's genuinely a big reorganisation going, you know, for county councils, district councils becoming unitary. You know, so there is a lot going on behind the scenes. But of course, the headline is the government didn't want us to use our democratic vote. And probably because we want to vote for Nigel Farage. That is how a lot of people will interpret what's gone on. You know, the government was trying to not listen to my voice that we're not happy with the government. So it looks doubly bad because people won't realise it's anything to do with reorganisation, and that the government's now having to cough up not just possibly £100,000 or more for Nigel Farage's legal bills or the party's legal bills, but 63 million to help these councils get over the extra admin they're now going to have to do that they didn't expect to have to do. Last week, they thought they weren't going to have to run these elections.
Mari, we've been a little bit cheeky and we've got the list of all the U-turns over here. 15 of them, everything from trans legal definition to winter fuel payments, farmers' inheritance tax, and then right there, down there at the bottom, local elections. And with those local elections coming, it's not a very comfortable list for Keir Starmer to be looking at.
It's not, and I think that May was already going to be difficult for Starmer for many reasons, but I think when you start to look at that list, it gives you that really, really stark reminder that as much as Starmer wanted to tell everybody he was a conviction politician and he was willing to make tough decisions to do the right thing for a decade of national renewal, the difficulty is some of these U-turns are very high profile and are the kinds of things that we were told he was willing and kind of had the gusto to be able to do. Welfare reform, he was talking about that a lot, and then suddenly it all fell apart. Winter fuel, so controversial, so many people hated it, and then again, he ended up going back. And I think the problem is it gives the impression that he's perhaps not necessarily quite as happy to stick to his convictions as he perhaps told us to start with, and I think that is not helpful for Keir Starmer at the moment.
And there's also the personality accusations which are coming through. People saying, like PMQs last week, Ed Davey was saying, he's gullible. Other opposition MPs saying, he's hapless, he's hopeless, he doesn't know what's going on. Whether it's Mandelson, whether it's Doyle, whether it's these issues, that he seems to be happy to delegate, and then when things come back to bite him, kind of says, oh, I didn't realise this was going on, I'll launch an inquiry. It doesn't look good.
No.
It looks hopeless.
No, and that leads me on to what has been quite an entertaining row this evening between the Conservatives and reform. Have a look at this. Shadow Local Government Secretary Sir James Cleverly writing on X, "I've always said these elections should go ahead. Steve Reed's credibility is now completely gone. This botched cancellation and U-turn will have cost local government millions. I don't think this funding will cover those costs. Labour is a joke," he says, to which Reform's head of policy, Zia Youssef, replied, saying, "Tory councils literally said to the government, yes, please, cancel the elections. You are a duplicitous clown." To which Conservative Party Chairman Kevin, this is great, isn't it? Kevin Hollinrake replied, "Bull blank. As you know, a couple did ask for postponement against our strong advice. All the rest did not. We argued and voted against this every step of the way in Parliament, including my fellow shadow ministers and me personally. You keep on lying to the voters. We'll keep fighting for them." Jessica, what do you make of that?
I mean, it's a real old ding-dong, isn't it? And Zia Youssef, he's one of those Reform politicians who really doesn't mind having a go and calling people out on X. And, you know, to a certain extent, he's got a point. The Conservatives' top line has always been that they oppose this, but in reality, you know, the delay of these elections would have helped them hold on to some councils for probably quite a lot longer, and Labour too. I think the FT did an analysis tonight that said Labour would have held on to 10 more councils potentially if these delays had been able to go ahead. So you can see why some of the main two parties were perhaps happy for this to be delayed a little bit longer.
Yeah, really interesting that, isn't it? OK, well, let's have a look at how that story is being reported. The front page is just coming into us here at Sky News. The FT says that Starmer has abandoned the delay of over 30 council elections in light of a legal challenge from Reform, while The Guardian says that Keir Starmer is facing anger from amongst his own MPs at the U-turn decision. Next on the wrap, the FBI is claiming a breakthrough in the search for Nancy Guthrie. A glove with DNA was found in the area near the missing 84-year-old's home and appears to match the one by a suspect in her home's doorbell camera footage. Now, her daughter, US TV star Savannah Guthrie, has issued yet another desperate plea.
I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here.
Well, let's bring in our US correspondent, David Blevins. David, it's all so sad, this 2 weeks now that Savannah's mum has been missing. But we have had an update of sorts, haven't we, from the sheriff?
Yes, agony for the family and really frustrating for investigators, but the net could be closing on the person behind the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. They've had two significant developments in the last 24 hours. As you say, that glove from which they're analysing DNA appears to match one that was worn by the masked man in that doorbell camera footage they were able to retrieve despite the device having been disconnected. They've also been able to ascertain that a distinct backpack seen in that video is only sold by Walmart. So law enforcement is talking to Walmart in a bid to identify people who bought that either in a store or online in recent weeks. But sources close to the investigation say there is still no leading theory. That, of course, hasn't stopped the conspiracy theorists, because this case is attracting all of the true crime enthusiasts, the online sleuths who are attempting to crack it themselves. That is what has prompted the County Sheriff, Chris Nanos, to issue this statement a short time ago. To be clear, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious and are victims in this case. To suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it is cruel. The Guthrie family are victims, plain and simple. Please, I'm begging you, the media, to honour your profession and report with some sense of compassion and professionalism. It's the sort of distraction the FBI doesn't need right now. President Trump has commended them for their skill and expertise in this case and expressed his hope for a possible outcome. But I have to say, no matter where you go across the United States right now, it is the question everyone is asking: where is Nancy Guthrie? That's partly because her daughter is a household name. Savannah Guthrie is supposed to be hosting the Winter Olympics for NBC right now, not making heartfelt appeals for the safe return of her mother, and partly because people share the agonising weight this family is going through, and they simply want to know what has happened to this woman.
Yeah, of course. David, thank you very much. Such a mystery. Daisy, Savannah Guthrie is such a huge star in America, and perhaps people over here don't realise just what a personality she is. And she always comes across as being very natural and very warm and just a lovely person. And you actually know her, don't you?
Well, I do. So I work for NBC. I'm royal commentator, so I've worked alongside Savannah for a number of years, and I've sat next to her during the coronation and the funeral and all those events. And even here in London, when I've been with her, any American, anywhere near her, will absolutely mob her.
Really?
She is really, really well known, and she's also incredibly popular. She's sort of a Lorraine Kelly, Holly Willoughby, but she presents the biggest breakfast show in the States, and her mother was also very well known to that audience, the Today audience. She would frequently appear on the show, so people are well aware of how close Savannah and Nancy are, and there is a huge amount of huge outpouring, and obviously everybody in the NBC family is devastated. And just picking up on that, the conspiracy theories, we've seen it before with stories of our own, like Nicola Bulley, remember, who went, and then suddenly you had all these vigilantes coming down and trying to solve the crime, and it's sort of 100 times bigger in the States with this story. And I do hope that that's not going to impinge the investigation, with people thinking they can do a better job than the authorities, coming up with all sorts of theories.
Well, that's the fear, isn't it, Jessica, that you get all these... I was reading today, a whole load of YouTubers and bloggers are hanging around outside Nancy Guthrie's house, and you think, don't get in the way of this investigation.
It was so evocative of that case, isn't it, of that Nicola Bulley case, where there were so many, people making their own podcasts out of this family's misery, mapping the local area, so they could post things on their Instagram or on their YouTube, and it's such a terrible thing for a family to be going through anyway, but at that compounding it, when you've got everyone posting every single, almost as if it's entertainment. I mean, I think that is sometimes how
and making
people
money
do it, and making money out of it. And I think that is, compounds what is obviously a really horrifying time and a very new phenomenon.
We just really hope for good news soon. Thank you both for that. We're going to move on and talk about pupils who aren't vaccinated against measles could be sent home from school as an outbreak spreads across London. Here's our health correspondent Laura Bundock with an update.
Measles can lead to meningitis, blindness and hearing loss. It can cause miscarriage or premature birth. So why is this happening? This graph shows the number of children getting the jab isn't high enough. 95%, this red line, is needed for herd immunity to protect the population and contain any outbreaks. But that target's been missed for several years.
We're fighting against misinformation, and I think part of it is the way that as doctors, as scientists, we communicate. We rarely say, this is 100% safe. And people want that absolute reassurance, but we can't give it because that's medicine. Conversely, you're going to go online and there's loads of people on TikTok will give you absolute facts about danger and risk. And that makes people concerned, which makes perfect sense. So people will naturally try to minimise risk. They say, well, if I don't do this thing that I'm not sure about, what could the harm be? We're seeing that harm now.
It's half term, so parents are being advised to check their children's health records to see if the vaccinations are up to date. If not, some schools have said children could be excluded from class. Extra vaccination clinics are also being offered in some areas. But there are warnings that without an increase in vaccinations, cases could continue to rise and more children will be at risk.
Such an interesting question, isn't it? Should parents be told not to send their kids to school if they've not been vaccinated, if they know they've been in contact with other children who've got measles?
I mean, I would personally favour that if it was my child in the school. I mean, I think that the seriousness, I think that we are seeing the results of the UK, public health not taking this seriously enough and allowing our vaccination rates to slip and slip. And, there are some statistics out there that in some parts of the UK, our vaccination rates are about the equivalent of Afghanistan and Malawi. I mean, that is shocking that we've gone from having a roughly 95% vaccination rate to allow it to slip that far in parts of the country. And I think, this should be a wake-up call for everybody.
Yeah, losing our World Health Organization elimination status is a real worry, isn't it? That shouldn't be happening this day and age in the UK.
And I hear so many people say, if you get measles, you'll be fine and you'll get through it. And the problem is that they don't understand that if you have a totally unvaccinated population, the measles that those kids get is a more serious type of measles. It's more life-threatening. So, yes, you can get a mild measles, and you've probably, because the measles you've caught hasn't ever had any sort of vaccination in its system. So it is really, really different. And children will die if we don't get on top of this. It's not just a case of a flu. There are so many other after effects, side effects that can come with measles. And I think people just are not taking it seriously enough.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. I don't think it's necessarily vaccine sceptics or anti-vaxxers. It's people who perhaps just aren't sure, so don't do it.
And I do think as well that there's always going to be a very, very small hardcore of absolute vaccine refusal, and there's very little any government can do about that. But there is a big number in those who aren't taking it up, who've just, slipped their minds, or they're not 100% sure and they've never really had the proper reassurance or persuasion, and therefore they've just let it slide. But, people will say it's a mild illness, and of course it could be a mild illness for someone who's an older child or for an adult, but you could pass that illness on to a newborn baby, and then it can be incredibly serious.
Yeah. Well, what does the government need to do about it, do you think? How do we tackle this?
I mean, there are so many issues, obviously local issues where the outbreak, or where the vaccination levels are very, very low. They need to go in very heavy in those areas. And you're right, sometimes it's people deliberately not doing it. A lot of times with measles particularly, it's not getting the second vaccination. So you sort of think you've done your job by getting the first one, but if you don't get the second one, then you're sort of letting the side down, as is. There are some pockets of demographics and populations who are more anti the vaccination. There are certain Jewish communities who definitely are not very keen on the measles. So those communities need to be talked to and need to try to win them over. But overall, it does tend to be transient communities. It tends to be people who are moving a lot, it's slipped through the net. It does tend to be quite often that there's a language barrier there, or there's a communication barrier. So there are just lots and lots of different work that needs to be done. It's not one solution.
No, one solution. No. Final thought, Jessica?
I do think that lots of this can also be put down to the fact that things like health visiting just really slipped a lot in the pandemic. The contact with people in early childhood, it just was wiped out really for those first couple of years. I know that's when I had my children. And so I think a lot of that, if we're going to try and turn this around, then a big focus needs to go back into those early years of contact.
Yeah, I think COVID certainly had a big impact on all of this, hasn't it? Thank you both for the moment. Now, there was some sad news today. One of Hollywood's greatest actors, Robert Duvall, has died. He'll be remembered, of course, for his roles in some of cinema's most iconic films. I'm thinking of The Godfather, of course, Apocalypse Now as well. Amelia Harper looks back at his life.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
A 45-year-old Robert Duvall delivers the line he would later become famous for. The 1979 film Apocalypse Now, playing the pompous army officer, Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore.
You know that gasoline smell? A whole hill. It smells like victory.
Born in 1932, Duvall built a career spanning 7 decades. He was known for doing less, an actor with minimal dialogue but maximum authenticity. After a Broadway stint, his first film role was 1962's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Hector, let's go out on the front porch.
His appearance as the reclusive Boo Radley led to more than 90 future film appearances, despite not uttering a single word.
Your father would want to hear this. This is business, not personal.
But his work led to this, a somewhat louder role in the 1973 film The Godfather as the mafia consigliere Tom Hagen.
Advice on how to patch things up. Just help me win, please, all right?
And the winner is...
Ha-ha! Oh, yeah! Robert Duvall!
Delivering a mixture of leading and supporting roles, Duvall won a similar magnitude of awards, including an Oscar for Best Actor in Tender Mercies. His portrayal of a country singer overcoming alcoholism took him to a total of 7 Academy Award nominations and 7 Golden Globes. But perhaps the greatest accolade came from his wife, Luciana Duvall, who said to the world he was an Academy Award-winning actor. To me, he was simply everything.
Amelia Harper reporting. What a star he was. He was 95 years old, 6 decades in the business. I mean, that in itself is amazing, given how fickle Hollywood can be.
Yeah, just seeing all of those different clips just shows you just the breadth of everything that he did. And the most evocative one, obviously, is that one about napalm in the morning. That's just one of the way he delivers it. And it's just become one of those most iconic lines of cinema, hasn't it?
But he also ad-libbed it, that line.
Is that right?
Yeah. It wasn't. He changed the script.
That's incredible.
At the time.
That sort of shows his brilliance,
which
doesn't
I
it?
love. Yeah, and he always said he much preferred those quieter, much more focused parts rather than, although Godfather he was much sort of bigger and brasher. He was very, very quiet and subdued. And
To Kill a Mockingbird, of course, just another iconic film.
Yes, even quieter in that one.
Even quieter. it was interesting. I've got a quote here which I quite liked. He said, "A young actor once asked me, 'What do you do between jobs?' And he once recalled, I said, 'Hobbies, hobbies, and more hobbies. It keeps you off dope.'" It's quite a Hollywood answer, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, there's his sort of generation as well, though, whereas it feels like we're losing them quite quickly, like Gene Hackman and Donald Sutherland. Obviously, Marlon Brando was a while ago, but, there's that 70s icons of cinema. Because
he was at drama college with Gene Hackman and Dustin Hoffman, the 3 of them. It must have been brilliant to watch them as youngsters learning their trade.
And you sort of, you look at him and you think of this sort of macho, feisty, fierce guy that he used to play all these sort of really strong characters, and you wonder who's in that role nowadays. We don't seem to have the superstars of the golden age of Hollywood anymore.
It's often Amelia's piece was talking about his wife, Luciana, who clearly was a lot younger, 41 years his junior, but their big passion, talking about his hobbies, was tango and Argentine dancing. That was his, so he did, he was obviously very romantic and was passionate about horses and dancing and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I think he said that Buenos Aires was the place he was happier than anywhere else, which is an interesting choice, isn't it? But his wife was from there, I think.
Yeah, he was a fluent Spanish speaker.
So
tango. Man of many talents.
Yeah, amazing. Well, we shall miss him. What a star he was. Thank you both. Coming up next after the break, we're going to take a first look at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Don't go away.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Hello again, welcome back to The Wrap. Time to have a look at what is making the front pages of some of tomorrow's papers. We're going to begin, there it is, with The Times, leading on Sir Keir Starmer's plan to delay 30 elections in May being abandoned. Let's bring in the FT, reporting that the plans were scrapped after the government received advice that such a move could be illegal. While the Eye says Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has forced the Prime Minister to U-turn on the delay, causing a new threat to Starmer's leadership. The Guardian, leading on Sir Keir Starmer, causing anger amongst his own MPs after abandoning plans to delay the May elections in another U-turn. While the Daily Express reports that senior Tories are accusing the Prime Minister of secretly plotting to lock the UK back in the EU, with Starmer making deals that will cost billions to back out of. Here's tomorrow's Metro, leading on Keir Starmer's pledge to extend online safety rules to AI chatbots to protect children from illegal content. While the Daily Mirror leads on a grieving mother welcoming change in data law, but urging the Prime Minister to act now to protect children online. And The Sun reveals that the new series of Line of Duty will reopen the hunt to identify, not again, arch-villain H. Really? After fans were furious at last season's finale. And the Daily Star pays tribute to Godfather star Robert Duvall, who has died at the age of 95. A picture of him on the front. Duvall dies at 95. Can't believe that about Line of Duty, really.
That's the big story.
That's the big story. We might have to dig that one out a bit later, talk about it in detail. Daisy, let's have a look at the front of the Eye. Farage forces elections U-turn. It seems a lot of Labour MPs are angry about this.
Yes, I mean, of course, it's humiliating for the Labour government to be seen at the wheel of another U-turn. But also I think Nigel Farage is going to be absolutely thrilled with the coverage because the Eye and various others, Farage forces elections U-turn. I mean, if you think about what most people are going to think, they're going to think, so Nigel Farage is on the side of the voters who lost their opportunity to vote and the government doesn't want us to have our opportunity. Now, they would argue, of course, that it wasn't as simple as that, but I'm kind of impressed at the way that some of the news... The Eye isn't a particular natural bedfellow of Nigel Farage, but they're certainly giving him a lot of kudos. And of course, it was his court case. He did, the party were taking the government to court, and as we now know, not only have they looks like they're going to win that case, albeit because the government realised they were going to lose it, but they're going to have to pay Farage's legal bills.
Yeah, that's going to be really tough,
really,
isn't
really
it? Knowing how much do we know?
I think people have been saying 6 figures.
Really?
So, I mean, it might be in the low 6 figures, but it's certainly going to be a substantial amount. I don't imagine that the lawyers that Nigel Farage engaged for a judicial review were cheap. I mean, look, and of course there is anger from Labour MPs, but there'll be such fury from Labour councillors as well. And those councillors, in pure political terms, they're your foot soldiers. You really need them to be, saying the good things the government is doing on the doorstep, or be the people who are willing to turn out all the time, delivering leaflets. For any party, they're the people who.
And of course, more costs there
things.
as well. More costs now that they're having to gear up their campaign and organise themselves in time.
Yeah, absolutely. More costs for the parties, but also, costs on last-minute hires of venues to be polling stations. People were talking about in some of the coverage that, just getting the printing done for all the kind of is an extraordinary task. It's the kind of thing that you have to prepare months and months in advance. And this kind of chaos is just extraordinary, really.
And a lot of those local councillors will have known that were these elections to take place, they were probably going to lose their positions. And now they're going to feel that they're sort of being led to lambs being led to the slaughter because, of course, now on the doorstep, not only will they be having to defend the government, a very, very unpopular government, but also having to defend the fact that there was this U-turn and that those voters weren't going to be able to vote anyway. So they've sort of got a double-edged sword now of having to get out there, probably lose their seats, pay for the privilege of losing their seats. I mean,
it's such a mess.
It's such a mess.
What about this last line on the front of the I-paper? Cabinet reshuffle likely in coming months as Starmer battles to save his premiership. How much trouble is he in?
I think he's on already incredibly shaky ground with his MPs. They've given him a reprieve until May, and they'll see what happens at the May elections, although expectation management is incredibly low. We can expect probably there to be an immediate King's speech after that, so they'll reset Parliament, reset the agenda, and also possibly a reshuffle. And that's an explicit demand from that soft left group of MPs that includes people like the former Transport Secretary, Louise Haigh. They've explicitly said they want a reshuffle. That probably means, if the tax investigation allows, a return of Angela Rayner.
What else could we see in that, do you think?
Well, of course, normally the threat of a reshuffle is meant to bring everybody into line and everybody's jockeying for position and, sort of being a bit of a goody two-shoes so that the head boy will pick them for the next plum jobs. You're just not sure that that's going to happen in this situation because it is so chaotic. I mean, the reason most of us think that Keir Starmer's still there is because nobody else has really stood up, either stabbed him in the back or stabbed him in the front and said, I want your job. The people who are most likely to want to go for those jobs obviously don't feel that now is the time to try to topple him. So he is kind of lame duck. And so I'm not quite sure what the point, apart from appeasing people who want a reshuffle, I'm not quite sure what a reshuffle is going to achieve.
OK, well, let's move on to the front of The Guardian. We've been discussing it. There's a different story in the corner here, Jessica, that you've spotted, which is, it's quite a headline, isn't it? UK plan for alternative to Visa and MasterCard. And this is all because of President Trump or concerns?
Yeah, it's truly an extraordinary measure that some of the big banks are going to look at doing, which is to front the cost of an alternative to Visa and MasterCard that will basically keep the UK economy going if Donald Trump turns off the US-based payment systems. And you can never imagine having to make those kind of contingency plans under any other US president. But they clearly take the threat seriously enough to want to do that.
And I can't work out, I mean, I haven't been able to read it properly quite how this will work. The meeting's happening on Thursday between these bankers, chaired by Barclays chief exec. And they are obviously, as you just said, they're obviously concerned enough. But the banking system, whether or not it's the SWIFT system or it's specifically just Visa and MasterCard of the payments, is incredibly complicated. How you could set up an alternative. And I'm not quite sure whether they're saying they would sort of have it running alongside until such time as it's needed, which could mean a vast amount of wasted money, because if it's not needed, then you're going to have to spend all that money to get it ready in case it is. And of course, there are other threats towards things like Visa and MasterCard, which we've seen so often, particularly cyber hacking, not because of Donald Trump, but because of Russia or China or whoever it might be, which I would imagine they already have lots and lots of contingency plans. So whether or not this can sort of piggyback onto one of those, I'm not sure, but it's not going to be cheap.
No, it isn't. And you can read more about that inside The Guardian. We haven't got the inside track on that just yet, but it is on its way. Let's have a look at this in the Times, more politics. Now, this has been an interesting thing today, hasn't it? Keir Starmer ally is investigated over smear campaign. Should we do that one next?
Yeah, I mean, it's truly been a twisty story, the story of Labour Together and their involvement. They're ostensibly a think tank, but were effectively a kind of campaigning organisation which helped elect Keir Starmer. Josh Simons, it was originally led by his now departed Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, but during the election campaign led by Josh Simons, who then got elected as an MP and is now the Cabinet Office Minister. And it seems like he paid during the time that the Labour Together was being investigated by the Electoral Commission, Josh Simons commissioned a PR company to investigate the journalists who were reporting it. Now, he claims he was trying to find out the source of their information. He suspected it was a hack, potentially from Russia, and that he never asked this PR company to do the extent of the background work that they did into these journalists from the Sunday Times, and including a colleague of mine at The Guardian, Henry Dyer. But, it looks extraordinary, really, for a political party to be looking into. I mean, the religious background of one of the journalists. It's something that I think.
And understandably, the Tories have come out, Daisy, haven't they, saying that it shows this think tank had a real contempt for the free press.
I mean, that's what it smacks of. It's the type of thing that strikes fear into, well, certainly into journalists' hearts and into anybody who respects and wants to withhold the freedom of the press. It has horribly authoritarian overtones. And yet again, we get Keir Starmer saying, "Oh, I didn't know anything about it. I'll get the Cabinet Office to investigate," and the Cabinet Office junior minister is involved in the story itself. So how's that going to work? It's just it stinks at this point. Whether or not it was just APCO, the PR company, overdoing it, going OTT, or whether they were told to go into that level of what looked like smear, or certainly digging for dirt on a journalist who was doing a damn good job at investigating. And then, of course, you've also got, within this Labour organisation, I think there are 2 cabinet ministers who sit on the board of it, Lisa Nandy being one. So how are they going to be involved in this? And we all know, if you work in politics, that, of course, there's a lot of cross-pollination. Of course there is. People are going to be married to people who are working, and there is a lot of that with this. Journalists married to Labour Party people who are all involved in this, and it is a bit of a spider's web. But it doesn't look good. No,
but fundamentally, politicians know it's the job of a journalist to hold them to account, and sometimes that is uncomfortable, and sometimes it's difficult, and sometimes it's not very pleasant. But pretty much every politician, you would hope, would say that is what a democracy is all about.
I mean, this sounds old-fashioned, but it might have been OK if they'd have just paid what they owed in declaring their donations to the Electoral Commission. We wouldn't be in any of this mess, because they wouldn't have to investigate the leak of that information to the journalists. They wouldn't have had the whole story unravel.
And there are few and far between proper investigative bureaus and departments and teams in newspapers anymore, because most newspapers can't afford, because these investigations take months and take journalists, and you're off the day job for months and months and months of digging. So things like the Sunday Times Insight team, it is a real jewel in that crown and needs to be protected. And the thought that some of these journalists, are being, yes, of course, journalists should be stood up to the highest standing. Of course they should, but this doesn't sound like just checking whether the journalist is doing his job. No. It's much more sinister than that.
It's more than that, yeah. OK. And let's just finish with the front of the Times, because I think this is a great photo, Jessica, don't you? What a handsome devil he was.
Yeah, no, it's a great photo. That's such a kind of old Hollywood pose, isn't it, with the elbow on the board. And he looks. It says. He died at age 95. Wow, at his home in Virginia. I mean, his wife. I thought her tribute to him was really, really touching, where she said he had all of these accolades as an Oscar winner and star of The Godfather, star of Apocalypse Now, but he was just her everything. There's lots of lovely pictures of them together. She looks...
And he certainly didn't let age slow him down. He was still being nominated for an Oscar in his 80s. He got married in his 70s. Good for him.
Doing the tango.
Doing the tango.
Doing the tango, yeah. Great stuff. He's on quite a few of the front pages tomorrow. Brilliant. Thank you both for the moment. We're going to talk about Team GB next. They've been enjoying a golden Winter Olympics, haven't they? But today we were quite literally brought back down to earth for the second time at the Games. Freestyle skier Kirsty Muir finished agonisingly close to a medal finish. She was just 3.5 points behind Italian. Oh, I knew it was coming. Bronze medalist Flora Tabanelli on her final jump in the free ski big air final. But she crashed, poor thing. She pushed to get back into the top 3 places. It comes a week after she missed out on slopestyle bronze by just 0.41 points, bless her. There she is, hobbling away. A mistake-filled performance saw the men's curling team suffer a shock 8-6 loss to Norway. Bruce Wyatt's team now need to beat Canada tomorrow and the USA on Wednesday in their final 2 round-robin matches to guarantee making the last 4. GB women lost 10-6 against Switzerland, meaning they rely on results elsewhere to reach the medal matches. 39-year-old Dave Riding says he'll have to go and get a proper job now after hanging up his skis. He's finished 17th in the slalom, even though this final ever run put him into the gold medal position for a short period. While he bowed out of his 5th and final Olympics, Team GB teammate Billy Major was 1 place higher in 16th. Elsewhere, Britain's Niall Tracy crashed out of the 500 metres short track. Do you know what? I've loved this Winter Olympics. I've really got into it. It's been great to watch, hasn't it? And we've done pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, it's always so astonishing to see those kind of feats, especially the skiing and the bobsleighs. They're like, you know, that's a sort of extraordinary feats of human achieving. But I love things like the curling, which is just something you would never watch normally yourself. You find yourself done with both Summer and Winter Olympics, don't you? Just watching these like what seem like obscure sports and becoming a real.
But at least curling, you don't feel like your mouth, you know, your heart is in your mouth, and you think,
it's a safe space.
Yeah, exactly, it's a safe space. The other ones, you just think, what are they doing? Why are they lifting?
How do you get into this?
Yeah, I mean, in the curling, the worst that could happen is you fall over and hurt your wrist.
Yeah. Yeah, whereas I was watching the skeleton live when we won our second golds yesterday, or third gold, whatever it was, and I just couldn't. I just kept thinking, if that was my kid, I just could not bear to watch that. It looks so terrifying.
What do you make of the cheating, though, in the curling? Because, I mean, that's also been quite eventful,
The double tapping.
Yeah, the double tap. Tell us what double tapping is, if you've worked it out.
As far as I'm aware, once you've set it off, or once it goes, you're not allowed to touch it. Yeah. And there's been this whole scandal between Canada and Sweden about whether or not they've done this. And I didn't realise, of course, because the Winter Olympics is one of those things where you suddenly find yourself Googling curling and something about, why is it so popular in Canada? Well, it's so popular in Canada because Scottish immigrants took it there, because it was a Scottish sport, 500 in the 1500s.
Yeah, they used to play on frozen locks, didn't they?
Exactly, yeah. And then all the Scots went off to Canada and took it there. So it's huge in Canada. That's where it's biggest in the world. And yes, if the Canadians to be accused of cheating.
Well, it's such a... You think of it as being very sedate, wouldn't you? Like Crown Green bowls. But it turns out they've been swearing and shouting and pointing their fingers at each other.
When you watch those clips, it doesn't seem sedate at all. Everyone was sort of effing and blinding at each other and accusing each other of having hidden camera footage, which also seems to have come out somewhere. But the actual footage that the TV cameras show, like there's just a leg in front of it at the crucial moment where you can't quite see whether their accusations are right or not. It's got all the makings of a thriller.
And the whole thing about it, apparently, is sort of a bit like rugby or whatever. It prides itself on being very, sportsmanlike and very gentlemanly, or it's very polite. And they're not meant to even rely on any sort of referee. They're meant to adjudicate themselves. That's part of the pride of curling. So the fact that there's cheating, and that because if you accidentally double tap, you're meant to fess up.
Right.
That's part of how it works. But now
follow behind it with a little finger, don't It's really easy to
their fingers. And of course, the next Winter Olympics are going to be held in the French Alps, which will be lovely. Yeah. But the curling and all the ice sports, do you know where they're going to be held? In Nice, the seaside city of Nice, which sounds very weird, doesn't it?
All I can think about is the air conditioning bill.
Perhaps they'll rename it Nice just for that 2 weeks. Thank you both very much. We're going to take a break. Coming up in a couple of minutes' time, is there alien life out there? Barack Obama seems to think so. Stay with us.
Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now.
It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon.
Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes. Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then.
There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits still. We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, boat seriously overcrowded.
This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. Clearly not had very much to eat at all, a lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa!
Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
Well, hello, and thank you for watching The Wrap. Every night of the week, we will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
Just cannot stand.
Stupid thing to do.
He did know what he was doing.
You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable? What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't rule out strikes.
I disagree. And laughs along the way.
Ooh, cheap.
Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Daisy and Jessica are both still with us. Now, it is one of the great mysteries. Is there life beyond Earth? Former US President Barack Obama claims there is, but he hasn't seen it yet.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens?
That would be my first question as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I thought that was great.
Yeah,
but Area 51, there's nothing there, which is a bit disappointing.
Yeah, but he wouldn't tell us if there was, would he?
Oh, well, that's also a good
It's
point.
also part of the it's all part of the big conspiracy, isn't it? I think it's really interesting how he answers just there are aliens, in that very nonchalant way, which makes it seem like he knows, when in fact he's just.
Do you think there are aliens?
I think it's difficult to say, isn't it? But I think how can anyone know for sure? But the universe is so vast that us being the only ones where there's life on the planet seems, extraordinary, really. And I saw a survey of scientists where it was about 50-50, where people.
There may not be. Well, Obama isn't the only former president who has been thinking about this. This is what Bill Clinton had to say back in 2014.
If we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised. I just hope that it's not like Independence Day.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good, would it?
No, that wouldn't be good. But I think most people who know about this stuff, much more than probably the three of us, do say the chances of life on other planets is, it's a yes, not a no. But does that mean they're, little green men? No, almost certainly not. But are there some sort of, living, breathing specimens? Yes, probably.
There was a poll done of British people recently. This was last year, actually. 75% of Britons think some form of alien life exists somewhere in the universe, and around 52% believe intelligent alien life exists somewhere beyond Earth. That's quite good, isn't it? So I think a lot of people do believe in this stuff.
Yeah, and I think that also we have to remember that we have nothing like the scientific capacity to be able to reach any alien life that might be sort of beyond the bounds of our own solar system. So they also might have no means of reaching us. And if they did have the means, they must be a lot more intelligent and powerful than us, and that's quite a scary thought.
That's a really
so maybe it's best that we just don't go in touch with each other at all.
Leave them where they
Let's
are.
be ignorant. Thank you both very much indeed. More reaction to Labour's latest U-turn as they change their mind on cancelling some local elections. Discussing that and the rest of the day's news in a couple of minutes.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Tonight on The Wrap, it's Nigel Farage versus Keir Starmer. The government announced its 15th major U-turn today. The Prime Minister has abandoned plans to postpone elections for as many as 30 councils in May after Reform UK took them to court.
They've caved, they've collapsed. It's a victory for reform, but more importantly, it's a victory for democracy in this country. We are delighted.
Also ahead, the FBI hail a DNA breakthrough in the case of missing Nancy Guthrie, the mother of US TV star Savannah Guthrie. The search is now in its third week. Schools warn that pupils who haven't been vaccinated for measles could be sent home as an outbreak spreads across London. We'll look at why some families are failing to protect their children and what the response should be. Plus,
nothing else in the world smells like that. I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
famous for his roles in Apocalypse Now and The Godfather, Hollywood says goodbye to Robert Duvall, one of the greatest actors of all time. And we discuss today's biggest stories with Deputy Political Editor of The Guardian, Jessica Elgot, and journalist and broadcaster Daisy McAndrew. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Hello there, a very good evening. Good evening to Daisy and Jessica as well. Hi. Welcome to the programme. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has been in Downing Street for 19 months, and by our count, he's made 15 major U-turns. The latest is on plans to cancel local council elections taking place in May. Well, today's announcement came after a court challenge from Nigel Farage, and in one more humiliation for the Prime Minister, the government is to pay Reform's legal bill.
Well, it was extraordinary. I mean, last year we saw cancellations of elections without any real exceptional reason. This year, up to 30 councils, 4.6 million people denied the vote. In some cases, Norfolk, Suffolk, East and West Sussex, this would have been the second year in a row that people who are paying their council tax would have been denied the chance to vote. So that's why we took them to the High Court. We were due there this Thursday. They've caved, they've collapsed. It's a victory for reform, but more importantly, it's a victory for democracy in this country. We are delighted.
So, Jessica, Nigel Farage making the most of this?
Yes, certainly is. He really looked like he was enjoying himself in that clip, didn't he? And just hours before, Starmer was asked whether he was going to stick to the course now, and he said, absolutely, I know exactly why I was elected. Well, and, you know, a few hours later, he has to do another U-turn.
Daisy?
I mean, look, when a Prime Minister who's as unpopular as Keir Starmer doesn't want to hold elections, doesn't want people to vote, and then is forced to do so by Nigel Farage on the courts, it's yet another very bad day at number 10.
OK, we'll hear lots more from you in a moment, but first take a look at this from our political correspondent, Maria Aurora.
The government has changed its mind again, by our count, for the 15th time. The government planned to postpone local elections in 30 areas of England due to take place in May. After a court challenge from Reform UK, the government was given new legal advice that said the changes would in fact be illegal. This means that over 4.5 million extra people will be voting in May after all. But why did the government want to cancel these elections? Labour argued that it was a waste of time, money and resources to hold elections for councils that would ultimately be abolished and merged into larger council structures anyway. But turns out that would have been illegal. And not only has the government scrapped these plans, it now has to scrap planned legislation it created to make these changes possible. And it has agreed to pay Reform's legal fees too, something that we at Sky News understand to be a six-figure sum. Opposition parties are celebrating this U-turn as a victory for democracy. But it is Reform UK that ultimately forced the government to change course with its legal action, something Nigel Farage won't let Starmer forget in a hurry. In an interview just hours before this latest change of heart, the Prime Minister promised no more U-turns. But by our maths at Sky News, this makes U-turn number 15. And with even more councils and council seats up for grabs in May than first thought, Keir Starmer has even more to lose.
Murray has joined us in the studio. This is quite a mess now for the government, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not the best optics for the government at the moment. Obviously, they're already in difficulty and trying to kind of regain some of their momentum and trying to kind of get things back on an even keel. And obviously, this is not necessarily the most desirable way of trying to reset the narrative. And it's difficult for the government, really, because they have spent a huge amount of time and effort defending this decision. Lots of different opposition parties, all different colours, have been complaining and moaning about this and really kind of fueling a narrative around, you know, the betrayal of democracy and this being completely and utterly unfair and taking people's right to vote away from them. And whether that's right or wrong is to an extent besides the point, because the narrative and the story that has been told has been incredibly effective, and Labour has been less effective, partly, for instance, because we've hardly really heard from the government today about this decision. The fact that they've had to U-turn on this decision and then essentially haven't really said too much, haven't come on Sky News, haven't come to explain themselves too much, I think suggests that actually they are aware that this is a bit uncomfortable and therefore they're hoping that something else kind of sweeps up the news agenda at some point.
Yeah, certainly tomorrow's front pages will be uncomfortable reading. You just saw a flash there of some of the U-turns that this government have made. 15 now, Jessica, on our counts. If you look at that, everything from the two-child benefit cap, mandatory digital ID cards and, of course, now the local elections.
And I think if you look down that list, there are so many of them which were really predictable that they would have to change, that felt like, you know, just storming down the wrong path, that Labour MPs warned them would be unpopular, whether that's the welfare changes or the winter fuel changes. You know, but then there's some that have just seemed to come completely out of the blue. Like they pressed ahead for as long as they possibly could with the farmers' inheritance tax, and then suddenly a few days before Christmas decided to rip that up as well. And it just feels like a kind of rudderless operation when there's this constant tossing and turning going on.
You wondered, Daisy, don't you, about the advice that the government had over all of this, the legal advice,
yeah.
for things to change so close to the challenge.
I mean, I'm sure that the government would love to say, you know, those wretched lawyers messed it up for us. I'm not sure most people would believe them because, you know, yes, it might be the case in this particular instance, but it wasn't lawyers that made them do so many of those ill-advised things. And, of course, it smacks of a sort of a weak government or a government with a small majority. You know, a government where maybe the rump of the party is, you know, where the tail's wagging the dog, but that's not the case in their case. They've got a whopping great majority. They just can't do anything with it, which is why it's so extraordinary that it seems to be such a dog's breakfast. Normally, if you have a majority, you can just get these things through. I mean, obviously not in this case, because this was a legal issue, but most policy proposals you can get through if you've got, you know, a strong leader and a big majority. Pretty much do what you want. But Keir Starmer doesn't seem able to do that. And whether it's his lack of political finesse, whether it's gullibility, whether it's because he delegates too much, as some people say, and therefore isn't quite aware, isn't in control of what's going on. There are lots of explanations of why these U-turns have happened or why Keir Starmer seems to keep getting his fingers burnt. But he does keep getting them burnt. And, of course, as a result, his popularity is plummeted.
OK, well, let's have a look at the papers and how this story is being covered tomorrow. The Guardian says that Keir Starmer is facing anger from amongst his own MPs at the U-turn decision. According to The Eye, the climb down has caused a new threat to Keir Starmer's leadership. While the Times also suggests that ditching plans to postpone local elections in May increases the political jeopardy for the Prime Minister. While the FT plays it straight, reporting that Labour acted on legal advice following that legal challenge from Reform UK. And of course, Jessica, Reform UK rubbing their hands now because the government's having to pay a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll have to pay their legal fees. You know, we think it'll be in the sort of low six-figure sums, which is, you know, pretty extraordinary that that's taxpayers' money being handed over. And, of course, it's all going to cost a lot more taxpayers' money because, you know, to explain a little bit about why the government wanted to do this, the reason they wanted to do this is because there is an enormous shake-up going on of different local authorities, some of them being merged. So lots of the elections that will now go ahead will now have to be rerun again after you know, those councillors might not be around after the reorganisation takes place. So you'll have to have elections run again. So you've got the extra expense of suddenly having all of these new elections and then potentially having to repeat it all again.
Gosh, yeah, a real mess. Well, it's all quite entertaining on X, formerly Twitter, Daisy. Have a look at this. Between the Conservatives and Reform, Shadow Local Government Secretary Sir James Cleverly wrote this on X. I've always said these elections should go ahead. Steve Reid's credibility is now completely gone. This botched cancellation and U-turn will have cost local government millions. I don't think this funding will cover those costs. Labour is a joke. To which Reform's head of policy, Zia Youssef, replied, saying, Tory councils literally said to the government, yes, please, cancel the elections. You are a duplicitous clown. To which Conservative Party Chairman Kevin Hollinrake replied, bull, you know what. As you know, a couple did ask for postponement against our strong advice. All the rest did not. We argued and voted against this every step of the way in Parliament, including my fellow shadow ministers and me personally. You keep on lying to the voters. We'll keep fighting for them. What do you make of that, Daisy?
Handbags at dawn.
It really is, isn't it?
It's like, I mean, you can see that this is, whenever the government has to do a climb down or a U-turn or whatever you want to call it, you know, the opposition parties will have fun with it. But, of course, it is galling for, I can see it's galling for Reform when the Tories seem to be saying, you know, we were part and parcel of the fight against this. And it's true to say some were, some weren't. It was convenient for some of them because, of course, a lot of people will be thinking when there's Conservative local councillors, do we want to keep them in or do we want to give Reform a go? It's very unlikely that the Labour Party, when there is a sitting Tory at the moment, Labour Party hopefuls are not going to be very hopeful of winning that seat with the polls as they are at the moment. So it's not surprised that there's sort of, you know, ferrets in a sack fighting it out on the right.
And Murray, of course, for all those councils, they're now in quite a tricky position, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. I mean, in terms of the practicalities of actually sorting this out, they're going to have to try and find places to have polling stations, which sounds pretty basic, but actually some of these places, these venues, will have already been booked by other organisations because they didn't think they were going to be needed. Things like staffing is going to be difficult because local authorities may have lent some of their own staff to other local authorities because they didn't think they were going to have elections. So how are they going to fill those staffing gaps now? In terms of the practicalities, it's actually quite difficult. But in terms of that Twitter spat, I think the thing that I find fascinating about that Twitter spat is the fact that you've got basically Tory and Reform attacking each other and pointing the finger. Now, it is absolutely correct to say that this decision has really come about because of Reform's legal action, right? So it's Reform that, you know, put their neck on the line and to an extent put their money on the line in order to get this, to kind of get over the line. However, I think the danger with both of those three politicians actually kind of taking chunks out of each other is they end up all basically saying, you're being a hypocrite, you're being a hypocrite, you're being a hypocrite. And actually, James Cleverly, in that Twitter thread, also came back to Zia Youssef and said, hold on, you stood on a ticket of reducing council tax and your Reform councils are increasing council tax. That is factually correct. And so you end up with a situation where they all look like hypocrites. And I don't actually know if that's helpful for them. No.
And the voters roll their eyes, shrug their hands and think, well, maybe I won't go and vote in the first place. Yeah, no, depressing, isn't it? OK, we're going to move on now. The FBI is claiming a breakthrough in the search for Nancy Guthrie. A glove with DNA was found in the area near the missing 84-year-old's home. It appears to match the one that a suspect was wearing on the home's doorbell camera footage. Well, her daughter, US TV star Savannah Guthrie, has issued another desperate plea. Have a listen.
I wanted to say to whoever has her or knows where she is that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing. And we are here.
I mean, it's just heartbreaking, isn't it? Listening and watching that.
It's just haunting, that video,
yeah.
You know, where she's basically pleading with whoever has done this. And I think what feels striking, you know, we've talked about breakthroughs, you know, the finding of the glove or the footage on the doorbell, but this is quite small stuff. You know, it feels like there might be parts of the investigation, of course, that we don't know, but it feels astonishing that there is no more to go on than that, even now, even publicly.
Yeah. Well, we did hear from the sheriff a bit earlier, the county sheriff, Chris Nanos, who made a statement, and it's almost unbelievable, this statement. To be clear, he said, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious and are victims in this case. To suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it is cruel. The Guthrie family are victims, plain and simple. Please, I'm begging you, the media, to honour your profession and report with some sense of compassion and professionalism. Daisy, it's unbelievable, isn't it, that, you know, people are accusing... You know, you watch that video of Savannah Guthrie and all you feel is compassion for her, and yet some people are making these accusations.
Yeah. And this tends to happen when a case becomes so big. Of course, you, as the family, you want your case to be publicised as much as possible, just in case there's somebody out there that knows something. And Savannah Guthrie being so famous, of course, in the States, this case is absolutely enormous. So it is an obsession for millions, literally millions of people now. And once you get to that level of obsession, of course, you get people, vigilantes, whoever, coming up with theories, repeating them ad nauseum. The theories getting more and more outlandish and more ridiculous. I've heard these theories that it's a member of the family. You know, it's reached these shores with people who I thought were more sensible than that, repeating these, you know, ridiculous and slanderous and scurrilous accusations. But people want also to be a part of it. You know, when there is this sort of movement of, you know, Miss Marples and you know, and sort of would-be Sherlock Holmeses out there, and everybody trying to think that they can put it together and come up with a solution. And it becomes very, very dangerous. And, of course, we've seen it with cases over here, smaller scale, but still very large, Nicola Bulley and so on, where it hampers the police investigation because you've got all these people who think they know better than the police.
And, of course, that's the last thing anybody wants. Well, we are all hoping for good news soon, of course, on the Nancy Guthrie mystery. Back here, pupils who aren't vaccinated against measles could be sent home from school as an outbreak spreads across London. Let's get more detail from our health correspondent, Laura Bundock.
Measles can lead to meningitis, blindness and hearing loss. It can cause miscarriage or premature birth. So why is this happening? This graph shows the number of children getting the jab isn't high enough. 95%, this red line, is needed for herd immunity to protect the population and contain any outbreaks. But that target's been missed for several years.
We're fighting against misinformation, and I think part of it is the way that as doctors, as scientists, we communicate. We rarely say, this is 100% safe. And people want that absolute reassurance, but we can't give it because that's medicine. Conversely, you're going to go online and there's loads of people on TikTok will give you absolute facts about danger and risk. And that makes people concerned, which makes perfect sense. So people will naturally try to minimise risk. They say, well, if I don't do this thing that I'm not sure about, what could the harm be? We're seeing that harm now.
It's half-term, so parents are being advised to check their children's health records to see if the vaccinations are up to date. If not, some schools have said children could be excluded from class. Extra vaccination clinics are also being offered in some areas. But there are warnings that without an increase in vaccinations, cases could continue to rise and more children will be at risk.
So, Jessica, Laura said it there, that parents could be told to keep your kids at home for maybe 21 days if they've not been vaccinated, rather than sending them to school. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I mean, it feels like something that is just such a national health emergency that kind of measure feels justified to me. And, you know, it's this kind of thing which protects not only, you know, the children in the class, but, you know, what might be vulnerable relatives for them or newborn babies who might, you know, get seriously ill if they contract measles. And, you know, the vaccine rates has been you know, going slower for a while, and it's felt like it's not been taken seriously, really, by a lot of politicians in quite the kind of emergency way that it should have been done. But, you know, some of the statistics, like in Enfield, where, you know, we've got these 60 children, then the vaccine rate is 64.3%, which is lower than Malawi and only just above Afghanistan. I mean, that's an extraordinary rate of failure, and it is on public health officials and government as well as parents.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it does feel that the government has taken its eye off the ball a bit here, doesn't it?
I think so, and I think it's really interesting that Malawi and Afghanistan comparison, because, of course, the difference is that we don't think necessarily that we're so lucky to be able to get those vaccinations, whereas in other nations, like Afghanistan, they will take the vaccination because they know that can be life-saving. We seem to be really blasé about it now, and we also seem to be blasé about measles and think that it's sort of like chickenpox. It's not really that serious, but it is a serious disease and it can be life-threatening, and it's also incredibly contagious. It's much more contagious than a lot of other children's diseases. So if you come into contact at school with somebody with measles and you haven't been vaccinated, you will get it. You know, it's about 90% chance that you will that you will get it. It is so infectious, and I just think we sort of think, oh, it's not a big deal, and it is.
Yeah, and it seems to be, doesn't it, that people aren't necessarily anti-vaccination or think that it's definitely the wrong thing. It's perhaps they just haven't got all the facts in front of them.
Yeah, and I think there's always, you're always going to get a very hardcore number of people who totally refuse to do it and who totally refuse to accept some of the science behind it. But actually, I don't think that applies to lots of these people who just aren't getting their children vaccinated. You know, we saw a lot of slipping of health visitors and the contact with young children over the pandemic. People, they live very busy lives. Lots of people live quite, especially in poorer areas, live quite chaotic lives. They might have had one vaccination and not the follow-up vaccinations that you need for full protection. So there's lots of reasons why that might be, and it feels like a concerted effort and push could, start to resolve some of this. Yeah. It's not hopeless.
OK. Do stay with us here on The Wrap. Coming up after a short break, we're going to be talking about a Hollywood great who sadly passed away, Robert Duvall. That's next.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond. You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello again. Jessica and Daisy are still with us. Now, there was some sad news today. One of Hollywood's greatest actors, Robert Duvall, has died. He will be remembered for his roles in some of cinema's most iconic films, of course, including The Godfather, Apocalypse Now as well. Amelia Harper has been looking back at his life.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
A 45-year-old Robert Duvall delivers the line he would later become famous for. The 1979 film Apocalypse Now, playing the pompous army officer, Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore.
You know that gasoline smell? The whole hill. It smells like victory.
Born in 1932, Duvall built a career spanning 7 decades. He was known for doing less, an actor with minimal dialogue but maximum authenticity. After a Broadway stint, his first film role was 1962's To Kill a Mockingbird.
Heck, let's go out on the front porch.
His appearance as the reclusive Boo Radley led to more than 90 future film appearances, despite not uttering a single word.
My father would want to hear this. This is business, not personal. They shot my father.
But his work led to this, a somewhat louder role in the 1973 film The Godfather, as the mafia consigliere Tom Hagen.
Advice on how to patch things up. Just help me win, please, all right?
And the winner is...
Ha-ha! Oh, yeah, Robert Duvall!
Delivering a mixture of leading and supporting roles, Duvall won a similar magnitude of awards, including an Oscar for Best Actor in Tender Mercies. His portrayal of a country singer overcoming alcoholism took him to a total of 7 Academy Award nominations and 7 Golden Globes. But perhaps the greatest accolade came from his wife, Luciana Duvall, who said to the world he was an Academy Award-winning actor. To me, he was simply everything.
Amelia Harper with that report, just brilliant, all those clips. Let's see what some of the front pages are saying about his death. One of the greatest is what the I front page says, while the Express calls him a Hollywood legend. There he is, gripping his Oscar. And the Mirror, farewell to a godfather of Hollywood. Jessica, it's amazing, isn't it, when you look at those clips and you think, gosh, how long he worked for, how long his career spanned. You know, that black and white clip from To Kill a Mockingbird with Gregory Peck. I mean, it's amazing.
Extraordinary, yeah. And also, you know, working well into his 80s. It's extraordinary to think of that such a longevity in that career. And you can see also from some of the people paying tributes to him, they also kind of span the decades, from Al Pacino, and Adam Sandler was just paying tribute to him and having worked on with him on a film on Hustle, Jamie Lee Curtis, like, you know, there is all the kind of greats from each of the decades.
Amazing. And some of those films are iconic.
Yeah, I love the fact also that he went for the Gregory Peck role in To Kill a Mockingbird and didn't get it. And a lot of people, you know, got the other role. A lot of people were saying to lose out to Gregory Peck is okay. You know, I think you can swallow that rejection if you're losing out to that man doing that performance. You know, you can do it. And the fact he refused to do the third, he was the only one of the big hitters in the Godfather series, and he refused to do the third one. And I've read different reports. Some said it was a squabble about money, and others said that he didn't believe in the third one as much as the others. But he clearly was an actor and a man of, you know, of great principle, and he liked doing things his own way. He preferred those sort of quieter, steely roles rather than the big showy roles. And Yeah, he was a very, very fine actor.
Yeah, just reading about him, he had lots of other passions apart from just and being an actor, including football, the tango, and he loved the capital of Argentina, Buenos Aires, a city he professed to love more than any place else.
Yeah, that's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how he seemed to be continuing that passion he had for tango right into his
I can just see him doing the tango, can't you? He's so
yeah,
cool.
he's got that.
He'd probably be very good at it.
Yeah, I think you have to keep your body sort of very still and measured, and that's a way that, you know, lots of people have talked about him doing his performances. You know, he's kind of understanding the underlying craft of it, or the underlying power, and then doing quite an understated performance. And I think you can find those moments of drama with tango. And
I think his Argentinian wife is a tango dancer.
Right, that helps.
That helps. And also, I believe that having a much younger wife does keep you young at heart.
Quite an age gap, wasn't it?
There was quite a... He married her at 74, and I think she was 33. But it was a love that survived.
Kept him young.
Yeah. She said today to the world he was an actor and storyteller. To me, he was everything.
Yeah,
you know?
Sweet. Yeah, very sad. 95 years old. Great, Robert Duvall. We're going to take a look at what is making the front pages of tomorrow's papers. Then most of them are in now. The Times leading on Sir Keir Starmer's plan to delay 30 elections in May being abandoned. The FT, we're going to see them in a moment, I promise. The FT reports that the plans were scrapped after the government received advice that such a move could be illegal. The Daily Telegraph also leads on Starmer's U-turn on cancelling elections for over 4 million people after being warned by lawyers. The Eye says Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has forced the Prime Minister to U-turn on the delay, causing a new threat to Starmer's leadership. The Guardian leading on Sir Keir Starmer, causing anger amongst his own MPs after abandoning plans to delay the elections in the 15th U-turn of his premiership. The Daily Mail say the Prime Minister will be forced to face the wrath of voters in May. Now his plans have been scrapped. The Daily Express report that senior Tories are accusing the Prime Minister secretly plotting to lock the UK back in the EU, with Starmer making deals that will cost billions to back out of. Are you enjoying looking at my face rather than front pages? The Metro leads on Starmer's pledge to extend online safety rules to AI chatbots to protect children from illegal content, while the Daily Mirror leads on a grieving mother welcoming change in data law, but urged the Prime Minister to act now to protect children online. And my favourite story, The Sun revealing, you like this one as well,
I like this one.
The Sun has revealed the Line of Duty will reopen the hunt to identify arch-villain H after fans were furious at last season's finale, and the Daily Star paying tribute to Robert Duvall, who has died at the age of 95. OK, I promise we have got the papers are here. We'll show you them later. Let's have a look at some of the insides as well. I mean, we've talked a lot about this smear campaign and a Keir Starmer ally who's being investigated. This is the Cabinet Office investigating
the Labour quango, which turns out, after the Sunday Times reported that they hadn't put their finances weren't quite stacking up. They hadn't revealed various donations to the tune of £730,000. This is the group organisation Labour Together. That Labour Together then asked a PR company, lobbyist called APCO, to do some digging into the individual journalists who had written this story about them, this unflattering story about them, and wanted to know all sorts of what seemed far too much detail about the journalists in question, including their religion, their faith. And the Times is now saying that actually there were false claims. There was one of the journalists called Gabriel Pogrund, and the Times is saying that some of the claims about him were false. We don't know what they were, but it clearly smacks of a smear campaign from politicians to journalists, from journalists who were simply doing their job by showing that they hadn't revealed their expenses and their donations.
I think it's quite murky here about what this PR firm were actually asked to do. Now, the way it's been presented is that they were asked to look into a leak from Labour Together, which they apparently believed might have been a sort of hostile state leak. And what the PR company actually delivered was an investigation into the journalists themselves and their backgrounds and their potential motivations. And they claim that's not what they asked them to do. But, you know, the detail in that report is so extensive. The idea that it is, just like, I think that'll be their defence, that it was just a kind of overreach. But, there are lots of sort of webs of relationships between the people there. The guy who was in charge of the PR firm was also an ex-Sunday Times journalist with connections at the paper. Lots of it kind of is very strange, like associations between people.
How many times has anybody commissioned an investigation or a report or a review and got far more than they asked for? I mean, I'm sorry, that doesn't happen. Particularly when PR companies charge by the hour. They charge £36,000. They are not going to deliver above and beyond what they were asked for. They're going to deliver what they were asked for. And there will be some sort of paper trail, unless this all happened on the phone and there were no emails were written at all about what Labour Together were actually asking this organisation, AppCode, to do.
Yeah, I feel this is going to run and run, actually, this story. We haven't heard the last of this.
We're scratching the surface, I think.
We're just going to move on to the front of the Daily Telegraph. Jessica, Trump attacks Miliband over energy deal with loser Newsom. Tell us about this.
Yeah, they're real massive rivals, aren't they, Trump and Newsom? And Newsom is kind of clearly a potential presidential contender for the Democrats. Has signed this deal with Miliband. He's kind of on this tour of Europe after the Munich Security Conference. But Newsom is like a kind of a different breed of Democrat, where he's a really kind of viciously attacks Trump on social media, mocks him, riles him, tries to play him at his own game, essentially.
Well, he's an excellent communicator as well.
An excellent communicator, and this I think this picture of him shaking hands with Miliband would have been a bit of a red rag to a bull.
We're going to rattle on because we're running short of time. Daisy, tell us about this in the eye. Passport laws could stop Britain's entry in the UK.
Right, so let me get... So this is British citizens with a legal right to live here could be barred at the border because there'll be tough new rules coming into force. They're coming into force next week. So this concerns dual citizens living overseas. There are 1.2 million of them. And under these new rules, they'll have to present a valid UK passport or pay £600 for a separate certificate. So this is obviously if if they're dual citizen, let's say they're Anglo-French, dual citizen, or whatever it might be, they're going to have to, I guess, pay to have the valid passport, even if they're coming... what I don't understand is if they're coming in on another passport, why would they have to do that? But the Home Office says this is to modernise the border through the digital system and that everybody's got to be digitised. I mean, personally, I think we do need a digital system. And I know people get very concerned about that it's some sort of big brother checking up on us all. But I don't suppose that 1.2 million people are going to be terribly impressed. Whether or not they'll have much of a say in it, whether or not they're voting in elections here and they'll be able to, to register their disquiet, or whether the government will think, well, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, OK, plenty more on that in tomorrow's Eye. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at more stories in tomorrow's papers. Do stay with us.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think?
It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost.
Let's crack on. Let's get started.
Hello again, welcome back. Time now for a closer look at what is making tomorrow's papers. Daisy and Jessica are here with us. Jessica, tell us about this on the front of The Guardian, a potential alternative to Visa and MasterCard, and it's thanks to President Trump, maybe.
Yeah, so UK bank bosses are going to meet tomorrow, and they are to start the process of establishing an alternative to Visa and MasterCard. And this is something that's been talked about for a while, having this kind of sovereign system. But it's been compounded by this idea that Donald Trump might have the ability to turn off these US-based payment systems and the sort of volatility that there currently is in the United States. I mean, it's extraordinary that it's come to that point. But Visa and MasterCard apparently is responsible for 95% of payments that are made in the UK. This whole new scheme was sort of created within the city, but the government is going to sort of back it. It's funded by the city, but backed by the government. And they hope to have it, up and ready to go by 2030. So it's something that's, it's not necessarily just a fallback option, but something that will exist within the next few years.
It's extraordinary to think that all these bankers are having to worry about this. Like you were saying, you can't imagine any other presidency where you'd have a bunch of bankers in London saying the president seems so off his head that we can't actually guarantee that Visa and MasterCard are still going to be going, or we're going to still have access to them in the next few years. So we better spend a lot of time and money in coming up with a plan B just in case.
Like NATO, almost, isn't it? It's the same sort of thing. But you also wonder, but if it's not going to be up and running until 2030, that's a long time.
Yes,
and a huge amount of money.
Can you imagine that it will be up and running by 2030? I can't. No. That seems... I mean, yes...
Remember, this isn't being built by the government.
Well, that's true. It's not an NHS tech adventure.
Talk to us about Royal Mail, Daisy.
Well, this is interesting because it's a story that's claiming that Royal Mail, which I'm sure is absolutely right, is much more concerned about parcels than letters. And so if there's a choice between getting your parcel to you on time or your letter to you on time, they're choosing the parcel. Now, of course, we've known for a long time that parcel deliveries, that market has boomed since online shopping and so on, everybody getting parcels delivered to their home. Whilst at the same time, letters, snail mail letters, have gone down considerably. I mean, I don't know about you, I don't get any bills in the post anymore. I get them all online. So the only things that come in the post are things I don't want, or as in, marketing stuff, the occasional catalogue that I throw away, and the occasional sort of parking ticket or something really dreary or something like that, but very little. And so or a birthday card. So if you were waiting for something important, I don't know, if it was me, I probably would say, yes, can you please deliver my parcel? Because that is, to me, more important than the sort of snail mail. But you can see that it is extraordinary that the whistleblower is saying, we literally prioritise the parcels and we don't really worry if the mail gets there on time.
Yeah, it does sort of make sense. I was in Denmark recently, and in Copenhagen, the main post office has all closed, and it's now been turned into a very nice hotel. And the state-run post office is finished. There is no equivalent.
Just private delivery companies.
Yeah, exactly, private delivery companies, because they're so good at having paperless offices, and they're not sending letters, so it is all parcels pretty much. And people now can buy the old post boxes and have them in their living rooms as a sort of souvenir. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, you can imagine.
But I mean, you can see that this is the future, can't you?
Yeah, and I think you can, and I think there's, it feels sometimes outdated to receive a letter. I think the only letters, like you say, that I receive tend to be a parking fine. I did used to receive letters, during when I was having both my children from the NHS, usually when the appointment was,
had already been.
Yeah. And they went through especially with my second pregnancy. They used to send me 2 letters, just 2 identical letters for every appointment.
Also from estate agents, they like to post letters telling you that they've sold houses on your road. And they're ready to come and look round yours. Yeah. OK. And finally, let's have a look at this one. Yes, AI cheaters, Daisy, in the FT. Got this one. What do you want to talk about this, Jess? Who wants to go with this one?
OK, why can't I see it?
All right, let me give you mine.
I don't know if I've got...
the little... Oh, this KPMG.
Oh, wow, the KPMG story, yeah.
This has been going on a long time. Sorry, I have reported on this before. But this is a partner at KPMG, one of the big four. This is in Australia. It's been fined £7,000 after using AI to cheat on a training course. And a lot of the big four, particularly now when they are doing applications for people, for job applications, because they went, particularly in COVID, a lot of these firms stopped doing proper interviews, human-to-human interview, did it all online, and suddenly realised that all these applicants were using AI online because they could do it almost in real time, as they were sort of sitting an exam. And it's a very similar thing that I think a lot of these recruitment processes are now going to have to go back to doing human interaction because so many, particularly of the young, can bypass whatever the exam procedure is. And I think our whole educational system has to change because of AI now, because it's ridiculous not to expect somebody to use AI if they can and if they want to. So we've got to flip it. Like at schools, I think we have to say, right, tomorrow we are going to be discussing Henry VIII. Go home, use AI, use everything at your fingertips to do your research, and then come in and tell me face-to-face what you've learned. So you use AI that way, rather than trying to stop the cheating, because I think that sort of genie is out of the bottle. We can't put it back in and stop people using it.
Yeah. But what's funny about this, you say that the guy was using AI tools to cheat on a training course. The training course was about AI.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it makes it even worse.
But of course he's going to. He's going to be an expert.
Showing initiative. I don't know. He's understood the course.
It's quite hard, isn't it, to know whether somebody's using AI or not? Do you find?
Well, I mean, you never know, really, do you? But I think once you identify that particular register that the AI seems to write in, there's a certain kind of tone and register, particularly, I think, ChatGPT. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about it at work a few times that when people submit comment pieces to the newspaper, there's just something about some of them, the way that the tone works, that you can immediately recognise it. Now, you're never going to spot everything, and I've actually probably these systems will become better at not using exactly the same way of writing. But I think at the moment it is actually quite obvious, particularly if you're into writing for a professional.
But also the younger you are, I think the better you are at spotting it. I mean, I'm constantly showing my kids some meme of something, going, look at this amazing animal doing this thing, and they're like, oh, Mum, that's obviously AI. And I'm like, oh, is it? I don't know. But they can see it when I can't.
Mum fell for it again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, they're like, you're so gullible.
Those same things happen to me. Great, thank you both for the moment. Coming up next, own goal agonies. Non-league Macclesfield suffer a cruel defeat to Brentford to end their FA Cup adventure. That's coming up next.
Over there, to your left. There have been airstrikes every day. Hezbollah are very sensitive about us showing any pictures, and we're being hurried away right now.
It felt akin to riding into some sort of Armageddon.
Many other areas have been hit badly. There are shells coming in every few minutes.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
It's trying to hit us. That's it. It got us then.
There's a lot of action going on. A lot of hits still.
We were the first journalists and the only outsiders to reach the site of the attack several weeks after it happened.
We found from the missile.
It's very difficult to see what around here could be conceived of as a legitimate military target.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, a boat seriously overcrowded.
This is one of the most severe viruses in the world.
Clearly not had very much to eat at all. A lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine
How much plastic
is lying at the bottom of this huge lake? Oh!
Getting up close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
Well, hello, and thank you for watching The Wrap. Every night of the week, we will be joined by the very best commentators to explain the how and the why.
This cannot stand.
Stupid thing to do.
He did know what he was doing.
You can expect more analysis.
This is going to get deeper. I think it's going to end up with Russia.
Is war inevitable?
What he's interested in is a deal.
That doesn't
rule out strikes. I disagree.
And laughs along the way. Plus, a look at tomorrow's headlines. The Wrap. Everything wrapped up for you from 10.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Time for the sports. Here's Mike.
There's a reason why I've got a Premiership medal.
There was a lot of noise around Alan possibly going to Manchester United and then Newcastle.
If you're asking me would I like Alan Shearer, of course, who wouldn't like Alan Shearer?
Doesn't bother me at all, that's all it is, talk.
There are only two clubs that are interested in Alan.
I spoke to Sir Alex Ferguson. The temptation to go to Man United was huge.
You name your price, you've got to be prepared to stick to it.
How much was it? That was a world record.
It's £15 million, making it virtually impossible for me to leave.
I think there was an inevitability that he would move at some stage.
Hear that shout for United! How will the lads?
We're breaking records. We're giving people hope again.
Be like 725 for his name and number.
I just had to come back home. It was my dream to play for Newcastle and score goals at the Gallagher.
A lot of people probably looked at us and thought we probably needed a couple of centre-halves. Not Keegan.
After all, I'm only a sheet metal worker's son from Newcastle.
If I had to make the same decision again, it would be signed for Newcastle all day long.
Blackburn Rovers are finally back in the big time. Jack Walker's millions and the managerial expertise of Kenny Dalglish are proving a potent combination at Ewood Park these days.
I knew what was happening up there at Blackburn. They were continually spending money. We was building to be successful. Jack Walker just had one idea, which was, this is my hometown club. I'm not interested in too much on the commercial side. I just want them to be a success.
Shearer, he scored on his debut! Alan Shearer, Britain's most expensive footballer, starts to repay the fee with that cracking volley.
Made it hard for myself, haven't I? People are going to expect great things off me now.
Being the most expensive footballer in the Premier League, how important was it for you within your own mind to get off to a good start and start banging in a few goals?
Blackburn Rovers and Southampton Football Club have put that price tag on me. People keep saying to me I'm the most expensive, all right I am, but I've got nothing to do with that price tag. I can only go out and play to the best of my ability, and if clubs want to pay that amount of money for me, then so be it.
It was Kenny and Ray, obviously, who had decided that they would like to buy him. Ray had him with the England under-21s. He knew what talent was there. And it was at their instigation, really.
The atmosphere completely changed. We'd started signing more expensive players, and it were just little old Blackburn that would.
And that was the wrap. Thank you very much for watching. All the top stories coming up right here on Sky News, including our top story: the government has abandoned plans to postpone elections.